this image here popped out because I really appreciate that you're trying to take on the structure. I love that you're working in grayscale. Round of applause for working in grayscale. I really appreciate it. I love the stylization, how you've used the white against the really tempered grays. However, one thing that you're missing, and I think you're kind of getting into it even just a little bit, you're just getting into it now, is finding the cube in all of this. So if we were to map out the kind of extremities that this structure has, basically its cube sits somewhere around here. So this is one edge. So if we got a piece of tape and we kind of taped it across, that piece of tape would eventually go down. That's how you find a cube, is if suddenly the object, the piece of tape or a marker or a grid line suddenly takes a big dip and a big change of direction along the z-axis, along the three-dimensional world. So this can only happen on three-dimensional objects, of course. And when we try to draw something that we want to make look realistic, we have to engage in that three-dimensional system. We have to add that three-dimensional sudden change in direction into the image. So this is basically what I'm talking about, the cube. So we have to find the cube in here. Once we find the cube, what do we do? Can anyone tell me what we do when we find the cube? So either you get a new layer and you start mapping it out, but you gotta find where these extremities happen. This kind of is a one big, really messed up area, but I'm just going to continue it this way. Can anyone tell me what happens when we find the cube? Symmetry line. Thanks, Istebrak. My senior quote. It's about cubes. That's so cute. We praise it. The light source. Excellent, Irish. So once we find the cube, we are told, basically by the lines that we've constructed, what the light has access to, because light travels in straight lines. So that means that light can't. I'm getting emails because of my stream, because I played some music on it. Copyright shit. Oh my god. But once we find this cube area, so basically this side of the cube, this side of the cube, what happens is it basically tells us the limit of the light source. So if the light source is coming down this way, on sort of like a Rembrandt kind of lighting, it is limited to this front side of the cube. So this guides your brush. This is like the best thing for you, because what it's going to do is tell you exactly where you can place the brush strokes, where you can place the highlights, and where you place the shadows, the contour shadows, and where you place cast shadows. So cast shadows are this amazing thing that make everything look beautiful because they are a direct way of representing the fact that light travels in straight lines. So if light travels in straight vectors, what happens is that it either reflects back or continues going if nothing interrupts it. So all this area here interrupted it, and these light rays kept traveling. So wherever you find an area where that directly is interrupted by the light, so the brow bone and then the light ray, there you have a cast shadow. And a cast shadow is a very sharp, sudden shadow that is, it's very unforgiving. It's not blended in with anything else. So when you think about the cube, it's like one thing, it's like it cascades. One thing leads to another. And that's really the best way, it's just like insurance policy, the best way to make sure that you're always thinking about the light source. It tricks you into always thinking about the light source. And knowing where the edges are lets you know where to cast the cast shadows, where to not blend edges, and how to replace your lines if you're one of those students that is plagued by their dependency on lines. This imagining of the cube on the structure that you've drawn, if you ever want to correct it or if you're starting from scratch, will help you avoid lines entirely or help you correct lines and replace them with the proper edges. So you probably already saw my critique on the matter here, but I'll still add it. I'll still do the paint over. Basically, what I'm going to do is exactly what you just saw, but with much more dimmed down grays. Okay, so this area here, are you gonna work? Oh, select it first. That's not right. I didn't make you that large. Okay, so again, thinking about the light source is coming down straight because that's what you told me with the nose. The nose looks great for the very sole purpose that you haven't blended this part with this part. And my pen pressure is turned off. No, it's not. So let's begin. One brushstroke there. One brushstroke there. He's kind of got the old face, so he's going to have some of that laugh line happening. One brushstroke on the nose, and you can see the nose is the most outward part of the face, so it's going to receive the most light. And does anyone feel like this character here is like a young person wearing a mustache? Can anyone explain to me why the proportions don't seem like an older person's proportions? When we think about the forms, the cube this way, and thinking about the presence of the light source, what happens is we start sort of proving that the light source is there in the room, so we create a light environment. Can anyone tell me? Okay, so I'm going to get some shadows. Start casting these shadows here. I'm going to get back to my sort of sculpting brush and start casting these shadows. Age signifiers aren't there. Too smooth? Too smooth? No, it's not wrinkles, it's not too smooth. What are the age signifiers? The nose and ears keep growing. Very good, Palmway, when we get older. What else happens? The ears should be bigger on an old guy too. The jaw is really defined. Keep going. You guys almost have it. Okay, I'm going to cut this area here off, because this is where the cast shadow happens. Right along there. A little bit over here. This whole area here does not get any shadow. The top here, a little bit on this side. And I'm just basically thinking about the edge of the face, where the shadows start and what the light is limited to. So this mustache gets a bunch of cast shadows on it. Very, very important shadow. The light sits here, and then the laugh line, or that little cheek area, sits there. Okay, and the side of the nose isn't a perfect geometric shape. It kind of curves back towards the cheek, so this connects here and here. Rough skin. Eyelashes are too fleek. Distance between nose and mouth. Pyro Helfer kind of has it. There was too much fat on the face. Eye wrinkles. No! You guys had it all wrong. So let me first try to finish up this light source. So I'm going to add in the hot spots. The hot spots are where most of the light rays touch. So this happens on areas that are high in brightness, as well as areas that are, I'm sorry, damn it, I should have muted. I'm so sorry. One sec. Areas that are high in brightness and areas that are very oily. So the nose is a very oily, shiny thing. Also part of the T-zone over here also adds to that. These are still blocked in. We still have to blend. They're pretty much working in the same direction. When it comes to old age, when you're creating someone whose hair is so white, there are certain things you can't do. And one of those things you can't do is you cannot draw big glamorous eyes. The large eye is a gender signifier for female and for beauty, so you can't use that on males. You gotta shrink that eye all the way down. Another thing that happens with old age is the sagging. So you guys got that part right. So the brow comes down, the brow bone comes down, creates this kind of like Neanderthal sag. The cheekbone pushes on the eyes just a little bit, and then you're going to get a lot of sort of like a big eye bag here that I'll add to it in a sec. But the shrinking of the eye is pretty much the biggest mistake you had here. Old people can have, a not large brow bone or a not saggy nose, but the eye size is pretty much a necessity here for it to be small, because not only is it an old person, it's a man. And that means that you're going to have to reinforce the gender and the age at the same time. And having a large eye is going to take away from that. So we're going to make the nose sag a little bit. The chin is a little bit more saggy this way, because we're trying to represent different densities. So the density of the, I know it's a caricature, but there you still have to keep some rules. So the density of the skin versus density of the bones, and density of the hair and density of the muscles. So your brush has to represent all of those different kinds of materials. So it still looks very much like a caricature. We still have that elongated neck, that exaggerated head length. I'm going to give him that Anunnaki skull to kind of complement the elongation, that big teardrop shape. But I'm going to exaggerate the size of the nose just a little bit more. I'm going to pull this little bit out. The lower lip is fine because usually with the ogre what we have is a large lower lip, so you can keep that the same size. And I'm just going to keep adjusting the nose. So the stream is okay for everyone? And the ears, as someone has mentioned, so these need to be a little bit larger. And a little bit more saggy, less perky. Okay. Yep, it's fine, good. Okay, so let's take a look at where it was before and where it is now. Before, very young looking, very perky looking nose, very large eye. It could just be confused with a woman wearing a really big brows and a mustache because the features are so delicate. But since we got the ogre in there, shrunk the eyes, enlarged the nose, sagged everything a little bit. We have a male signature, the signatures of the male form that read a little bit more. Okay? So when you're drawing, if you want to keep the proportions you had, let's just say he's just that kind of handsome old man, like he's a super handsome old man. Shrink the eyes anyways, because the eyes are giving off a different kind of story. They're giving off a different story. Okay. As for the way you've kind of added the shadows in, so let me see if I can. Okay. What happens is, I'm just going to use the soft brush. I'm sorry about it. It's really soft, but what happens is that you want to preserve the shadows, the dark darks, for where you really need them. You don't want to use them, oopsie. You don't want to use them in areas that are really adjacent to areas which are true shadows. So this side of his face here, the bottom of his nose, the eye socket, and the shadows of the bottom of the lower lip, all of those areas are directly opposed to the light source. They don't look at the light source at all. So these are the only areas that should warrant this level of, the mustache is white, so it's going to reflect back on the nose and lighten it up a little bit. But those are the only areas that you should be having any extreme shadows. Everything else should be at a pretty much a mid-tone, just like this. And because the room is so bright that it's revealed him, what happens is the background, select inverse, the background should be lighter. Because you're trying to show that the room needs, that the room is, he's in a room where he is visible, not just visible, he has a lot of, the whites of his mustache are visible. That says a lot about what kind of light is in the room and the power of that light to reveal that much white in an object. So the room should be a little bit lighter. And those are my suggestions. I took away a lot from your style a little bit. You're kind of working with a rough brush, which is really cool. I love that. I love just the general atmosphere of this. It's so different, and it's I love what you've done with the sort of closed eyes and the kind of abstract way you've just stapled on the eyebrow and the mustache. It works. Something about it works. I just recommend that you work a little bit more closely with references. They really will guide you in the right direction, and you'll get a much better read, which will provide a much better response from your viewers. And don't forget about these really, really important blocks and where the cube sits. So these important blocks here are really, really important. It's you're illustrating directly. You're a sculpt, a three-dimensional object, a three-dimensional world, as if your canvas isn't just a flat image, but it's a box in which other objects exist. There's light bouncing around, there's light, there's cubes getting in the way of the light, and that's really the best way to improve your work, is to start thinking like that. So I don't know, I'll keep these blocks for you unblended, but if we look at the before, the before, the white actually worked more as a staple. But remember, that nose you drew is very feminine nose and a very, very large eye. But if this is entirely abstracted, and there's nothing going on here where you want to do anything realistic, you really don't have any direction towards realism, you want to actually take more from the realism and have even more abstraction, then these pointers are obsolete. They really won't help you. But if you do want to add more realism in your work, that's one way to do it. For this image, the face is way too small for the head. So what we're talking here is you probably, I don't know what it was that caused you to shrink and try to fit as much of the face as possible in the head. It might have been this bang right here that you don't want to hide the eyes. It might have been you worked on the face before you added the features, but this face is way, way, way too small. So what needs to happen is it needs to be, the head is too small as well. So it needs to just be readjusted just like this. Remember that if you guys add in props too soon, you take the risk of having those props stand in the way of any of the features you draw. So you're going to try to cramp in everything and overcompensate. I'm just trying to eyeball where this face might sit. So it'll probably sit somewhere there. It will be hidden by the sort of little bangs here. The face will extend this far. That's the kind of three-quarter view that you've introduced, so you have a different three-quarter view than what you had originally chosen, and the proportions are a little bit off. I'm going to have to do a little bit more work to get it to be a decent before and after, so just bear with me. So I'm going to keep trying to find it. Okay. It's very hard to do this because I have to imagine the horizontal lines and where they sit. Okay. So let's erase where this face was. So let's erase this face completely, and then I'll show you where the face was before I erased it, and you'll see how small that face was and how small the head was. And this is what happens when you go straight in without planning, without drawing a gesture line, without measuring the size of the head. This is what happens. You end up over-rendering a face that needs complete readjustment. Replacement completely needs to be changed. So before, very, very small. Look at the size of the neck compared to the head. It's almost the exact same length as the head. That's completely wrong. And after we've managed to balance that out, and then we can place the face in properly. Because the head comes first, not the face. That's why you plan out where the head should go and the size of the head. So when I correct it, that's the route I take. I find the size of the head that works, and then I make the face fit in. So this is not going to be possible for me to fully render this for you, but let me try my best. It's not going to be easy. Kind of have an extreme three-quarter view, but a not extreme body three-quarter view, so you have that confusion. So what's the lesson learned from this critique? Can anyone tell me what it is? carry that all the way there and move this eye over here. I'm trying to just make it fit in with the head. I could have just shrunk the body around the head, but being me, I probably just did it backwards. Okay, so I'm trying to make this face match. The chin is a little bit masculine. The face is a little bit, still a little bit off, but it's a little bit better than before. I'll probably just finish the rest and liquefy. But measure and get in the gesture line and plan before detailing and features. Excellent. You cannot expect it to succeed if you guys aren't actively trying to find where the face will be. It's not about the face, okay? I know people like to draw faces. I know people think that an artist is measured by their ability to draw a face, which is true. Honestly, that's just unfortunate, but it's true. You can't, though, just because it's an important part of drawing, draw that first if you're trying to draw a head or a portrait. You can't just jump straight into the face because you think the face is the hardest part to draw, so let me just draw that first and get that out of the way. No, you have to draw the full body. You have to draw, at least plan with a couple of lines here and there so you know that where you're going to hyper render, where you're going to just spot render like a crazy hamster, and just get in all those amazing details. And look how well you did the lips. All of that is going to be adjusted again. So you're going to have to either paint over all those details you spent hours on, or erase them completely and start over, or try to manage and find a way to make the face work, which is going to look really, really stiff. And you're going to tell, I'm going to tell, anyone can tell that the face had trouble. So all of this goes into, it goes back to planning, how important planning is. So I'm just going to have to shrink her lower body a little bit to make it match, make it a little more feminine. But you shouldn't have to adjust this much, is what I'm saying. Adjusting this much is bad. If you need to adjust this much after you've rendered for so long and spent all that time, that precious time, detailing, you're going to end up fixing all of that and changing all of that. It's wasted time. It's not efficient use of time. Planning, all it takes is like a couple seconds to just plan it out. And it'll make all the difference. It'll save you hours of correction later, so why not just do it early? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover all this up, but the face is still a little bit tilted so that the lines are going this way. I have to fix that. So what I'm going to do, try to do, is just show the way the lines are horizontal. No. Oh. Yeah. It's not just like lack of proportion in the way you've placed the face on the head, but lack of proportion in the face itself. I think the eyes look good over there. The lips, the line of the lips is also not matched, so that needs to be readjusted as well. Almost there. Oops, there. So remember, use lines. I know you don't plan. I know that you don't plan because the face is also not planned. The thing that you thought was most important, let me start painting that first. Even if you did plan, you must not have planned properly because it wasn't matching what was happening with the face. And the amount of detail out here is very different from the amount of detail in here. So this must have come after. This could not have come before. Or you took a pause and started rendering. This looks rushed. This doesn't look rushed. So you did spend a disproportionate amount of time on the face, which is okay because we love faces and we love detailing, and I do that. But not before I planned it. Not before and when I don't plan, I pay the price. You guys want to see the paintings that I didn't plan? And I went straight in with the face. You can see with my process videos, but it becomes very obvious which ones look stiff as all fuck and which ones don't. This one I planned. This one I sketched out the gesture, the exact gesture I wanted, but this one and this one it just became an exploration of a portrait. I wanted gesture in here. I tried to add in some hands here, but it just looks so stiff for me to dress up something that I never even planned. This is stiff as all hell. This is stiff. Look how stiff the hand looks. All of this crap. This I think I planned a little bit. This I definitely planned. This became a sketch, and this is probably one of the most successful gestures I've ever drawn. This one was barely planned, also very stiff, but the hand at least worked. The hands worked because I had sketched a little bit after I went into the face. Before I finished rendering the face, I went in and sketched a little. But this one, a complete sketch. I can even show you the sketch that I used. I don't even remember where it is. But yeah, the sketch, let me just find it. Istebrak.deviantart. Damn it, now I have to find it. Oh, it's on Instagram. Instagram. By the way, my Instagram got hacked. Did I tell you guys? I've been telling everybody. I don't know how that happened. This one right here, this was the sketch before it became a painting. And that's why this painting was so easy for me to do. I probably rendered the body the first and the face the first before anything, and that was finished in one session. Everything else took hours and hours because I didn't plan the landscape. So that was another way that not planning really affects the way that you draw or how fast you finish or the efficiency of your rendering. But this sketch is was what allowed me to have control over the gesture, make sure the head is the right size, make sure everything is the right size before I went in and started rendering crazy details. So you guys cannot render without planning. It's like you have a crazy weapon and you're going to aim it at something, but you're taking no effort to aim it properly. You're just going to aim it, and it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. Your crazy weapon is your ability to render. You have an amazing rendering capacity. You have high rendering RAM or whatever, but you're not aiming, all right? So aim a little bit better. As for the shadows and for the colors, I think your colors are a little bit muddy and a little bit dark. Skin is generally, it exists in a very, very light spectrum, and yours are very, very dark. So you're having mid-tones, shadows all the way beneath the mid-belt. Skin should be working from up here. Skin should be up here somewhere. Not in no man's land. Avoid this entirely. So that's why the face probably looks a little bit chewy and leathery. That's because it's muddy colors. The muddy colors happen when you work with really, really dark values. And skin does not work like that. If she is really, really dark and really, really tan, orange, fake tan, it'll look something like this. This is pretty much the realistic read of how that looks. This thing. It makes no sense. There's no real life occurrence of it where it actually happens, so that even when it happens in real life, people don't associate with this. This does not look wrong. You look like you're burned. You look like the leather of your skin has been dyed. That's because skin in itself works in a very, very high value. It's a very translucent substance, so it needs to have values that when you paint it should be painted with high values above the mid belt here. So I recommend for now as a diagnostic, okay, what should I do, Istebrak? You gave me a bunch of pointers. What should I do? I recommend you start planning, work a little bit more with portrait gestures. The portrait gesture is very, very simple. It's not a full body gesture. You don't have to think about the full C of the spine, bends of the spine, balancing against gravity. You don't have to worry about any of that. What you do have to work on is just the basic size of the head compared to the width of the shoulders, the size of the neck compared to the head, the face, and the fact that the symmetry lines and vertical and horizontal symmetry lines are planned, and the symmetry lines that are sort of consistent throughout the feature. So the nostrils are balanced with the lips, the lip corners are balanced with the eye corners, and the fact that the face itself is the right size for the head. Okay, so those are all the pointers I can give you. I don't have time to keep rendering this, but before, after. So I was working with the size of the body you had. I could have shrunk the body around the face, but the size of the hair that you had, the neck, it was all telling me your face, it was more of an issue of fitting a face onto a body that you have. So you wanted, or you probably had this before, or I'm not sure what your process was, but the face was a completely different size. Now it kind of fits in with the the size of everything else. If you wanted to shrink the face, the body around the face, the hairline has to be lower. And this is basically what happens. When you fix one issue, a bunch of other issues become realized. So when you raise the hairline here, when you raise it up, when you shrink the size of the skull, look at the size of the skull. It's huge. It's really massive if compared to her tiny little face. Her skull should end somewhere here, and she's got all this extra discrepancy of volume in her hair. So you have to shrink the hair down, make it match the face. The neckline and the neck width is very masculine at the moment. So you have to make it thinner, more slender, and shorter, a shorter neck. And the whole body here needs to be smaller, and then you can fit it into the face. The lines of the face are all pointing to a worm's eye view of sorts, an angled worm's eye view. So we can see her nostril, so that means that she's kind of tilting her head away from us, or we're looking up at her a little. That means that you have to make sure everything else has that. So this shoulder can't be higher than this shoulder, because what's happening is she's tilting up. This shoulder is going to be lower than this shoulder. We're going to see a little bit more of the bottom of the hairline, the bottom of her nose, and the bottom of her other nostril. The bottom of her neck as well is very visible. Do you guys see that? That's because we're looking up at her, or she's tilting away. And the reference you used to draw this, it must have been tilted. So those are my suggestions. I hope they help you. If you don't plan, you really will have a stiff image. It doesn't matter how well you've rendered the eyes, how well you've done everything. It will not feel real. And I guess gesture is a common theme today. What you're drawing here is a menacing character, a character that's supposed to be a threat. So when we draw characters that are a threat, there's a very limited amount of gestures that we can use. There's a set amount of gestures that are very threatening pose. So let me Google threatening pose. Let me see if we can find something. Threatening pose. Okay, UFC. There we go. Do you see this? Shoulders are back. The legs are far apart. It's a very dominating kind of gesture. It's a very intimidating gesture. The neck is very, very long. So let me show you how universal this pose is. Gorilla threatening pose. Very, very similar. Let me see if I can find it. The neck is always just extended really long. Okay, this is not a threatening pose. This is the come hither pose. There's this one, but this one's more like not active. It's not ready to pounce. Where is it? Probably the closest thing. No, this one's really derpy. Oh, I remember finding one. This one is pretty what's the word, domineering? I don't know what the word is. But whenever you see the neck at full length, whenever you see something like that, that is a threatening pose. Let's find something else. This one is kind of also threatening because you see some of the neck and then you see the legs. Fully balanced, a stable character that does not look like it can be pushed down very easily. That's what you want. But over here, what we have is something a little bit more waiting in line at Starbucks. It's kind of like you're not really worried about threatening anybody. So what happens is what you need to change is create a pose that lengthens the neck. So you need to lengthen the neck here, lengthen the silhouette, expand the size of the shoulders, push the lower part of the abdomen and the pelvis out a little bit. The arms need to be generally very, very relaxed, or not relaxed, it's more like they're relaxed but at the same time ready to kick your ass. A larger shoulder line because this looks very feminine. Small shoulders are very, very feminine. If you want a character that looks very masculine, very menacing, very strong, you want to expand the size of the shoulders compared to the neck. So very, very large shoulders means very, very strong men. Those are the symbols. If you guys want to have a gender attack with me or gender debate, it's not the time for it. These are the symbols that we work with as illustrators, as concept artists. Okay? And then you've got the silhouette itself, the whole canvas plus the silhouette. You're trying to show off a character. So let's take a look at the way they presented Kylo Ren in the movie. Every time we saw him, he always had this very long kind of sort of empowered gesture, and it was very stiff. It was not a flamboyant gesture. So distance between shoulder, I mean, just the distance between feet and their shoulder width apart. Very, very large shoulders, longish neck. This is from bird's eye view, so he looks even more menacing. I mean, worm's eye view. Um, Another one of these, I don't think this was in it. But this also is very, very strong looking, I guess. There's one right here. This looks actually really, really cool. I don't think this was from the movie. But wide shoulders, long neck. Look at the arms. They're relaxed, but they're also not fully relaxed. So this is the pose you kind of want to work with. This is the pose you should have been working with. Longer character. And if you have a horizontal canvas, look at all these. Look at how they framed all of these. Long vertical canvas. If you've got a horizontal canvas and you're trying to show off something's length, it really doesn't work like that. We need to see the feet to complete the menacing gesture. Wide shoulders, neck visibility, arms relaxed but not really relaxed. Okay, let me see if I can find the scene where he's first introduced in the movie. I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of these because they're kind of censored from Google. Not sure if I can find that very first scene that we see him in the movie. He's so tall and he's got the silhouette going and the light was behind him. That all added to him being menacing. Also, beware of large heads. Large heads equals chibi, okay, which equals small, which equals cute, which equals child. So don't do large heads. Shrink the size of the head. You want a quick fix for your silhouette? Your silhouette looks too girly. Don't fix the body. Just shrink the head. That will help you. So let me see if I can add these minor changes in. And see what difference they make. So shrinking the head elongates the neck. Gonna chuck the body forward just a little bit. Fix this. Shrinking the head a little bit more, less round, more vertical. The more round, the more silly it looks. Trust me. Trust me on that. Do not make a round, big skull that is round. It'll look like lollipop mascot or something. The proportions here are all off. If this was a person with a functioning nose, they'd want a symmetrical nose fit in the mask. So you need to push that together this way. Don't bring in an expression on the mask. The masks are expressionless. So find what is expressionless symbolically, which is basically flat everything. Like a line and two dots. That's pretty much expressionless. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to use when you're doing any kind of mask. Okay, just fixing the jawline, fixing the silhouette here. Alright, so take a look at before, after. Which one is more menacing? They were both intended to be scary, but which one actually works? Now there's that, and there's the fact that you've kind of split the canvas in half completely. You've completely just cut the canvas in half. What you need to do is decide what's bright and what's not. If you want him to look menacing, again, remember that for a second where we see Kylo Ren in the video, in the movie. Is his name Kylo Ren? Is it Kylo Ren? Am I getting it wrong? There's a silhouette that happens. Yeah, it's Kylo Ren. I Googled it. So what you need to do is that. You need to give us a silhouette that will make him look darker. His eyes are glowing, so you're going to get a chance to make him look like he's glowing. His eyes are glowing, so you're going to show off the light show on his mask. And his little doohickey here is going to have a chance to glow a little bit as well. So what I'm going to do is, let me just preserve this. Throw a wash. Color. Probably like a navy. So we either have the background lighter than he is, and him be darker. So hide, multiply. But those little bits on his mask, they stay illuminated. And that makes him look a little bit more menacing this way. And you can fill the background with something and crop. And he'll look like the scary monster that he is. Or you can make him in his dark room, in a dark room, and the illumination is on the mask like you did it originally. But all of that is, you don't have to have a crazy fog around him in order for him to feel menacing. I think you felt that he wasn't scary enough, so what you did was you added too much fog. And you kind of just cut the image in half. So you felt like if you added this, he would feel more scary. That it's not. It's all in the gesture. The you can have like no background and he'll still feel scary. It's because it's all in the gesture, the intent, the story that you're telling. God damn it. Right here. This is kind of fanboy pose, but something like that. Very, very minimal background. It'll still read because the story is in the gesture itself. Okay? I hope that helps. I couldn't paint over completely, but the slight changes really did make him feel a little bit more menacing, a little bit more demanding of, like a little bit more dominant. So look up references. Don't ever feel like, the reference will affect your style. Who here thinks references affect their style? Yeah, glow in the dark is always a nice change. Who here thinks references affect their style? Admit it, be honest. A little, do they? Habit thinks so. Can you address how to use references? I will in a second. I did make a video on that though. I won't be able to cover it extensively. That's not the issue for me. The issue is just finding good references. Why do you have ad block and u block? Because overkill. I don't really think so. Not even in the least. Good. Without a doubt, they do for me. Lord, yes. No, not really. Not really. Sometimes I feel like references can be a little limiting to my imagination. Dude, brah. Listen. You will never, at any point in your life, be limited or have art ruined by the use of references. References do only one thing to your art, which is improve the realism of your art. They do not affect the style. They do not affect the theme. They do not affect the story. They only affect one thing, which is they make them look more realistic. References affect not only your anatomy, but your understanding of human behavior. So gestures, expressions, all of those things are realism. Realism is always and will forever be, if you're into illustration and concept art, a plus. It will always be a good thing to have. It will never be a bad thing to have. I have never seen any concept art that is limited by the realism invested in it. The most realism separated concept art I've ever seen, and it still worked for me, but it still had that tiny little bit of realism, is the journey art. Journey concept art. And they weren't going for a realistic creature anyway, a realistic person. They weren't drawing humanoids at all. They were drawing some sort of creature, some sort of spirit, a symbol. So they weren't even using that much. But if you look at the walk cycle, if you look at the snow physics and the sand physics, if you look at the particle physics, if you look at the way they represented the flowing of the little scarf thing, all of that stuff added to the style. It didn't take it away. It didn't take away from the image. The gesture, the way it looks around, the character's general anatomy and symmetry. Look at that symmetry. All of that stuff is brought in through realism, is brought in through referencing. This, yes, it's a character that does not look very human-like, probably is, just covered up and stuff. you probably would have benefited a lot by getting an actual actress or model and having them dress up as this when you were doing your concept art, because it still would have given you a very, very great anchor or gauge for what you want to be visible, what you want to shrink. They probably shrank the head on purpose because they really want to exaggerate this big triangular shape in the character silhouette. They really wanted to exaggerate it and analyze the concept art that way. So they shrunk the head a little bit. Very, very little realism, but the realism is still there. It still benefited the image. So this is the extreme, in my opinion, in my experience, what I've seen from concept art, this is the extreme. When it comes to an actual human that you're drawing, when it comes to that character, that Sith character you were drawing, or any of you here, all of you are drawing humans of something, some sort of human, some sort of gunslinger, or some sort of steampunk girl, or some sort of I don't know what everyone has their own imagination, everyone draws their own thing, but you all could benefit from references. At no point will references ruin your style. Do not slow down your development and your improvement like that. I am so moved by this and so annoyed as well, because when some of you say that referencing is going to ruin my style, no, it's like saying improvement is going to ruin my style. It's like saying studying is going to, one day, referencing is going to catch up with you and bite you in the ass, and you're going to realize you're studying realism without even realizing it. You're going to improve on your own, and your drawings are going to look more realistic on their own without ever having touched references. You're going to naturally draw more realistically because that's what you see in the real world. If you want a direct response from your viewers, you're going to want to start working with realism. If you want to be hired in some sort of concept art studio, the more realism you have, the more chance you're going to be hired. Realism is introduced through no other great source than the real world itself, and that's referencing. So please don't limit your art development. Please don't limit the efficient development of your true style that will happen later on. And newsflash, none of you have a style right now. You're all here because you're students. You're all here because you want to learn something. So it means you're all not at the place you want to be just now. If you were, you wouldn't be here. You'd be drawing in, like, with a closed room and lights turned off and eerie music, and you'd just be studying 24/7. You are all here because there is something that you're lacking in your work. And trust me when I tell you, it's not a style that you think you have. It's just a habit. It's just a habit that you've developed. You've drawn anime long enough that it's affected the way you draw eyes permanently until you fight it off and escape your lines. If the way you draw hair, those are all habits. It's not like an actual affected, premeditated style. So stop using the I'm not going to use references because they affect my style. Stop using the I want to preserve my style excuse. That's BS, and it's not going to work. You want to improve. You really want to create those moving, amazing characters, those landscapes. You're going to have to use references one way or another. Okay? So let's see what everyone's saying. Town Mushroom thinks that I am espousing making hyper-realistic art. Draken says she's trying to impress upon you the importance of learning what is real and what that encompasses. Thank you, Draken. I feel like I'm too hesitant to branch out from the reference I meant, as in once I base my painting on a reference, it starts limiting my original vision. That is a legitimate worry, and dude brah, give it a chance. Try it 2 or 3 more times. I swear to you, this is the problem that I felt when I shifted over into realism, and that is the exact way I sort of just took away from it. I took what I wanted from the reference. I took the gesture. Everything else was my choice. The way the fabric flows, the way the hair flows. It's all unrealistic. It's all stylistic. It's all anime influenced. I love the way they make, over exaggerate gestures in anime. That's something I took out of anime. But it's always based on realistic symmetry, realistic muscle structure, realistic gesture, realistic animated gesture. All of that benefited my work. So remember, you have to pick and choose which parts you want to preserve, and which parts you don't need, and which parts you really are having trouble with. So the way the hand connects to the elbow and where the elbow connects to the shoulder and that gesture, that's something a reference will teach you. No matter, how many times you try, you'll always try it. You'll always draw it stiff. Take it from me. I've been trying to sketch every day, and I've been really seeing where my weaknesses are. My weakness is in the way I connect the hand to the wrist and the way I complete the gesture of the hand and the arm. That has really been my biggest issue lately, and I've been forcing myself to take some references on because I need to build a better visual library in my understanding of arms and arm gesture and it connected to the spine. So yeah, that's a legitimate worry, dude brah, but I swear to God, what will happen is you will eventually kind of just take away what you want. You will preserve the original spirit and motion that you wanted in your drawing, and the reference will only benefit from it. You got to give it a chance. You can't, for the first time use a reference and it looks too much like the reference. Give it a chance. Wait a little bit. Um, uh, he makes videos about his sketchbooks. Anyway, does anyone have any questions pertaining to this discussion topic? Save my soul from anime. I like anime, but I despise drawing it. Yeah, it's not very fulfilling, I've noticed. I tried it for a while, for a long while, a year, and it didn't fulfill what I was looking for. We're all the kindergartners, and there is a big lady putting a reference fence around us. Yeah, look at amazing anime artists, and you'll see there's actually a few realistic signifiers there, such as the eye line in Kawase and Kushart's work. Can you give us an example of what a good reference is and a bad one? I'd have to find it and then Facebook and post it to my Facebook channel or tweet it. I have a couple of, like I'm in my inspiration folder, but it's filled with hundreds and hundreds of images, probably hitting 1,000 already. I probably will find one and post it to you guys, but I do have in mind, I know exactly which one I want to show you guys. I've got a tip: reference the shape and stuff that you like, leave the rest. Yeah, you don't have to follow the exact features as they are in the real world. You probably want to draw an elf face. That's fine. You probably want to draw an exaggerated ogre kind of World of Warcraft style, but you're still going to have to look up a reference for that gesture. The way the hand size is compared to the head, you're still going to have to find that stuff. Okay? Thanks as to trying to copy ref without just copying it and leaving it dictate the image and idea is something I've been struggling with. Yeah. You know why you sometimes, dude bra, you know why you sometimes have an issue with the reference taking over your image? It's because you never started off with a narrative anyway. This image right here, this person, did they really think, like, I'm going to ask you honestly, I don't know if they're here right now. Did you really, really just take a moment to think about what he's doing? Where is he going? What's his inner battle? If you're gonna base it on a Sith, I mean, let's talk about the Sith. He's just a crazy motherfucker. So he probably takes no shit from anyone. You probably want to have a good narrative behind to drive your need to capture that gesture. So your reference will not take over your image. Your narrative will take over your image. That's what's really going to push the completion of that image. So using the reference is fine. Let it take over for a little bit, but eventually, if you've got a good narrative, trust me, it will work like insurance. It'll take care of what needs to be taken care of. It'll pull it from the reference as you need it. The rest, it will all be driven by your spirit as the artist, as the creator, as the storyteller. You're all storytellers. That's why you're drawing, to tell something. So just give your references a chance. I promise you. Is it okay to reference other art? Really good question. And no. If you're learning just now, I'm going to say no, but the answer is, there's also a yes in there. But I'm going to generally quote me on the no. Because other artists have their own issues. And when we get a reference, let's say we're working with a reference. All right, let's say we're working with this guy. Let's say this image was drawn by another artist, and we have the version that he drew over here. This version is probably like 60% of the realism in here. If it's a really good artist, it'll probably be like around 50-60% of the realism. You bring in your image over here, okay? And you're going to take from this. You're going to take probably 30%, 20% of that realism. You're going to preserve it properly because you're still a beginner. And you're going to get like 20% of that, 60% of that, 100%. You're getting a diluted version of that realism. Go to the source, all right? And the only time another artist's work works as a reference is just to observe their general light, understanding of light, the way they've worked with their colors, the way they've balanced their grays, the detail scope, the way they've balanced the detail, the gesture, the flow, all of that stuff. You can be inspired by it, but don't reference it. And don't copy it, because that's copying art. That's really not going to satisfy you. You're an artist. You have a certain ego to you, which is good, a good ego. And that's not going to be satisfied. So go to the source, because your rendition of the source image is going to be closer to realism than using an artist's already diluted version for realism. another artist's brain and their problems isn't a good source for information. Everyone has to fight their own brain. So don't use someone else's reference. They're fighting their own brain. So you don't have to fight your own brain and their brain to try to find a reference for your work. You don't have to preserve their limitations. They're probably doing something wrong too. Just go to the source, okay? You can get so much from this. If I use this, so let's say I wanted to use this guy as a reference, I would shrink his head because his head right now is just too big for me. I know that's weird, but if I don't want this reference to sort of govern my use of it, so I want to draw an even more menacing character, I would probably exaggerate the features. So I would shrink his head. Whoa, that's too small. I would probably enlarge the size of his chest. So you're still using the reference, but you're taking from the reference. I would expand the size of his shoulders. I wouldn't make his foot kind of lean in like that because that looks really prissy. So I would probably increase the size of his feet. This is what I would do. So this is a way to not let your reference take over. Is to just decide which stuff you're going to change. And I would absolutely increase the size of his hands. They would just get so huge. Even though his head is really small. It's okay because all I need is their symmetry, the use of the gesture. Probably stick his he's kind of standing in an awkward pose. Stick his hips out just a little bit. And this is how I would change this guy into this guy. And this is probably people who look like this in the real world are probably celebrated athletes because this is like the optimal size. And this is what I would do to this reference in my rendition of it. So you don't have to copy it perfectly because people come with all kinds of faults. All right? Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Actually, Ista, do you have any tips on how to come up with ideas to draw in the first place? Having a lot of issues with that as well. That is a problem I'm facing on my own as well. And all I can say is watch movies, watch cartoons, go back to the basics. What got you starting? Drawing anime. That's what really got me started. Got me into art. Go back to basics. Go back to Disney movies. I'm just watching Disney movies every single day, trying to find what it is that originally drove me to draw. All of that eventually leads you to discovering your taste and what you like to draw, and out of that you'll start to find ideas. So go back to the basics. Why did you start drawing in the first place? And start rewatching all that anime. Go back to Dragon Ball Z, guys. I'm telling you, it will inspire you like no tomorrow. You'll see, you'll just suddenly explode with ideas. Not just Dragon Ball Z, anything that originally got you started into art when you were a kid. So have a great day, guys. Bye bye.